You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sharron Angle from Nevada. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, and around the world on the internet. And please check out our websites, conservativecommandosradioshow.com and ccrshow.com. Sharron, we do have our first guest of the day on with us, a really distinguished gentleman. It is our honor to have him on the show. And Sharron Angle, will you please make the introduction?
It is my honor to make the introduction of Colonel John A. Warden III, who's credited by Norman Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell as the architect of the Desert Storm Air Campaign. The Desert Storm Air Campaign was based on Colonel Warden's revolutionary concept of the enemy as system, in which military forces are considered parts of a much larger whole. He wrote the seminal work on modern air power theory, the Air Campaign, Planning for Combat, which has been translated into at least 7 languages. He is also the author of Winning in Fast Time. Colonel Warden has been a special assistant to the Vice President of the United States, Commandant of the Air Force Command and Staff College, successful business founder, and Air Force Fighter Wing Commander. Welcome, Colonel John Warden, to Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Sharon, thank you very much. Pleasure.
Well, it's our pleasure to have someone who actually can explain some things to us, we hope, about what's going on here today. But first, let's go back a bit in history. Explain to us, if you will, this architect of Desert Storm Air Campaign. Why do they call you the architect? Tell us a little bit about what your theory is here and how it worked in Desert Storm.
Well, so immediately after the Iraqis invaded Kuwait in August of 1990, pulled together a handful of people and started to put a plan together to resolve the whole thing very quickly, very inexpensively, and based it on a couple of seminal ideas. The first one was that you always started your thinking with what you wanted your enemy to look like after the war was over. In other words, how you're going to win the peace. And then the second thing, as you mentioned, was the concept of the enemy as a system, which allows you to think about the enemy not just as a bunch of guys with tanks or airplanes, but as a unified whole that you can break down pretty straightforward if you do things in a concentrated and in a time-compressed way. And we did that, and 38 days after we started, Iraq was in complete strategic paralysis, and the Army guys were able to go in with virtually no casualties and just clean the thing up, and it was pretty cheap, pretty easy.
Well, it's amazing to me. You've written this all down, so this is not a secret. It's not under wraps. Anyone can really know what you did there. In fact, you've told us what you did there and how quickly you got it going. You've written a couple of books, Winning in Fast Time and The Air Campaign, Planning for Combat. So it's not unknown what you did or how to do that. Tell us, is that happening today with our air war campaign in Syria?
Well, unfortunately, it isn't, and it's sort of interesting that this administration, and it's not alone, that has had sort of an anti-war bias, has kind of, I think, thought about war as either a good war or a bad war. So Iraq too was bad, Vietnam was bad, but they didn't learn anything at all about how the war could have been and should have been fought. So what they're doing now, I think, is making some significant errors that don't need to be made. The first one is that we're simply not putting enough airstrikes in a short enough period of time, really, to make sure that we finish this state thing off quickly. The way we're doing it now means that the Islamic State, which happens to be a very competent organization, evil though it may be, is actually able to react to what we're doing, because we're giving them some time between strikes, and we're not hitting them across the whole breadth of their territory. So if we could concentrate, we get more things done faster, which we have the capability to do without any problem at all. I think this thing would resolve itself much faster.
Now, you're the expert. You were called the architect. Have they called on you, Colonel Warden, to say, we need some help here? Would you give us some advice?
Well, I'd be happy to do it, but the answer is no. That the phone has not rung. So.
The phone is not ringing. It's interesting to me that the phone is not ringing. Why do you think that is? Why? What is your, just as an outsider like the rest of us, looking in now at what's going on, why haven't they come to consult someone who's obviously got some expertise and has won?
Well, I obviously there's no way to know for sure, but what really suspect happens in this particular set of cases is that probably much like the situation that existed in Vietnam particularly under Lyndon Johnson and Mr. McNamara, that there is probably an intense desire on the part of the people in the White House to do very careful control of the level of effort, so that they clearly seem to be doing something, and they are. But on the other hand, they can say we're keeping it measured, and we're not going to. This is not an extreme kind of a reaction, and so on and so forth. That would, I think, would explain a part of why they're doing things the way they are.
In our opening remarks today, we kind of hearkened back to the Vietnam War, where the soldiers were fighting. We were winning that war, and yet here at home, the politicians undermined that force. Do you feel like that's what's going on again? Are we seeing just deja vu?
To some extent, I think yes, but I think that it's still a larger issue. And in my mind, one of the real serious errors that we made in the Vietnam War, and the thing that explains why the North Vietnamese won, even above what Johnson was doing, was the fact that we were doing things to North Vietnam in such a slow way. We even had an operation that was called Rolling Thunder, and although that sounds kind of neat, it really was. There would be an attack on something, then there'd be a delay, then an attack on something else, which meant that the North Vietnamese, who were pretty good too, were able to recover, figure out how to counter. So we just went back and forth, and it was a war of attrition for 10 years. And unfortunately, that there's an awful lot of thinking, especially I think on the part of the anti-war kinds of people, that's kind of the right way to fight a war, because it's a safe way to fight, so on and so forth. But in reality, that when you do things very slowly, it's dramatically more dangerous. You lose a heck of a lot more people, and you have a pretty darn good chance of not winning the war.
Which is what we saw exactly in Vietnam. And sadly to say, now I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think the war was won in Iraq when President Obama took office?
So we got another problem here, and this applies to this current thing with the Islamic State, and another thing that concerns me a great deal. I am not aware of anything that this administration has said that could really constitute a real picture of what they intend to accomplish. I mean, the president has said he wants to degrade, which is a very meaningless kind of a term, degrade and destroy the Islamic State. Well, that's
I want you to hold that
what does
thought.
it mean?
I want you to hold that thought, because we want you to stay through the break. We're up against a break now. Can you stay, Colonel Warden?
Sure.
We're talking with Colonel Warden, and we're talking about just what Obama means with his terms This is Sharron Angle and Rick Trader. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia and around the world on the Internet with our new Internet broadcast partners, CPR Worldwide Media and Vigilant Liberty Radio. Now you can listen to Conservative Radio Show at any time, any day by calling 832-999-1199. Also, please check out our website, Conservative Commandos Radio Show and CCRS Show, ccrshow.com.
Listen up, Christians. God has a couple of questions. Is it okay with you that atheists kick Christ out of schools and government? Godstickers.com. Is it okay with you if atheists take over America and mock God? Godstickers.com. Are you ready to fight back and unleash the gospel of Jesus Christ to 30,000 drivers per year on the streets of America? Then get a car magnet from Godstickers.com. Atheists can run from God's word on Sunday, but they still have to read your bumper on Monday. All car magnet sales donated to MissingPets.com. Are you ready to make America do a U-turn? Visit Godstickers.com today and unleash the Word of God on America's highways. Godstickers.com car magnets. God's Word on the street.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. This is Sharron Angle and Rick Trader. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, you can on to vigilantlibерtyradio.us. For a rebroadcast of yesterday's Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 5 p.m. this evening, please go to cprworldwidemedia.com and click on the Listen Live link. Now you can listen to Conservative Commandos Radio Show at any time, any day, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. At the break, I asked our guest, Colonel John A. Warden III, who is accredited by Norman Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell as the architect of the Desert Storm Air Campaign, what could President Obama possibly be thinking? And we had just gotten into the terms degrade and destroy. I asked you to hold that thought. Colonel, tell us what that means, if it means anything.
Well, and that's a real problem. That one of the mistakes that people make, certainly in war, and they make it in business strategy and a lot of other places, is that they don't have a real clear picture of what they want things to look like after they finish doing something, a war, for example. So the degrading and destroying, it could have any kind of a meaning that you wanted to put to it. You could stop right now and say, well, we've degraded them. Have we destroyed them? Well, probably not, but what does it mean? What is probably the larger issue that has to be addressed is we're going to conduct this war, and we ought to finish it off in a couple of 3 weeks, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to talk about this is going to last forever or be intergenerational or any kind of nonsense like that. But we also ought to be saying that after we have done this operation, what do we want Syria especially to look like, and to a little bit lesser extent, what do we want Iraq to look like? And there are a lot of possibilities, But the one thing I think we would all agree is we do not want to see Syria descend into the kind of chaos that we're now seeing in Libya, we almost saw in Egypt, and so on and so forth. We need to have stability in that area, otherwise that there will be another group of Islamic State, Wahhabi kind of guys that are going to come back and reestablish themselves, and it will just be a festering wound in the entire Middle East. So as we're conducting the war, we need to know, how do we know when we're done, what is going to accomplish, and make darn sure that we don't do things during the course of the war that in fact leads to this terrible instability, which would be very, very easy to allow to happen in Syria.
I have to say, Colonel Warden, I am shocked and stunned that someone who really understands, has been there, done that, literally has the T-shirt, has written the books, was never consulted. And I know that my co-host, Rick Trader, is chomping at the bit to ask you more questions along this line. Rick?
Yeah. Sharron and Colonel, what we're dealing with, or what we have in the White House, is a man who's a total amateur at this. Colonel, I've said here in the Conservative Commandos Radio Show many times, say what you want to say about George Bush, but at least he surrounded himself with good men that had experience, knew what to do, and he went to these good men for answers. Colonel, first of another thing I'd like to say to you, thank you so much for that fireworks display. That was the greatest fireworks display of all time, taking out the eyes and the ears of our enemy. But even after all that, Colonel, it took boots on the ground to really wrap that thing up. I think that, and as you were describing, you're more or less describing what happened in Vietnam, and what Barack Obama is proposing to do is more or less like surgical airstrikes. Well, we'll hit them there, but we won't touch them there. We'll do this, we won't do that. That proved to be a failure in Vietnam. Unless we go in this thing, Colonel, to win this war, I don't see a very good outcome. Do you?
No, and what I can see is if we do it wrong, that we can leave the area in a heck of a lot worse shape than it is now, even with this Islamic group sitting where it is. At least it only controls part of Syria now. I mean, we could really do an awful lot of damage simply by not conducting the war in the right way. And I don't see anything so far that leads me to think that the administration has a clear view of what it wants to accomplish, that it has any real measures of what success would genuinely be, what destruction of the Islamic State, and then going in with this idea of arming moderate rebels. I have no idea in the world what a moderate rebel is, and how we remotely could think that we can control what these people are going to do and where they are going to aim the weapons and the training that we're going to give them. A lot of things can go wrong with this.
Colonel, I think I heard you correctly when you said the Desert Storm air campaign was 38 days. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, I want to read you a couple of things here. This is an article from the from USA Today, an article entitled "Air War in Syria Could Last for Years." And I'm quoting from this article now. Bombing runs in Syria could continue into the foreseeable future, according to a Defense Department official. And also it says here, the strategy announced by Barack Obama involves airstrikes, training, advising, and equipping local forces to battle the militants. And now I'm quoting a Lieutenant General William Mayville. He says, that won't happen quickly. I would think in terms of years. When you hear that, Colonel Warden, what's your thoughts?
I would have to say that I think that is extraordinarily dangerous, and I might even be inclined to use the word lunatic. After all that we have done in the last 50 plus years, starting in Korea, if we only learn one lesson, it seems to me that it ought to be that long wars are really, really bad and expensive, and they don't come out very well.
And not only that, Colonel,
short wars do, and we can make this short. It's not like it has to be long. And the idea of saying it will be long means that it will be, and it means it will be done incorrectly. It just doesn't make any sense.
Also, Colonel, I think our history has shown, I don't think the American people have a stomach for a long war. I mean, in my opinion, wanting to get us out of Iraq and Afghanistan is what gave us a man in the White House by the name of Barack Obama. The American people tire of these things. Colonel, I can remember back in 1991, and also when George W. Bush went into Iraq. Magnificent job our Air Force and our military done. It was absolutely incredible. But the American people want to see, but then they want it ended. Then they want the troops brought home. And I just don't see that the American people have a stomach for a long, protracted war.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but there are two parts to that. One, I don't think we have the stomach for it, and the other thing is that we shouldn't put up with it. Now, if you are being invaded and the barbarians pouring over the gates, why you fight as long as you can. Mm-hmm. But in something like this, where we can control how long this war lasts, the idea that we should allow it to be long makes no sense at all. It simply means that it's going to be very expensive, and a lot of things are going to go wrong. I have no doubt in my mind that this thing could be brought to an adequate conclusion within a matter of 3 or 4 weeks if we put the air power against it that we have the capability of putting against it. But people got to realize that although that looks like a big effort and it looks expensive, in the longer term, it actually is much less costly, and it means that there will be a heck of a lot less damage even done to Syria and to the innocent people that are caught up in this Islamic State thing.
Colonel, the other thing I think people need to consider, when I say people, I mean our leaders, they can't telegraph to our enemies what our intentions are. And this is what people like Barack Obama seem to do. Let's tell our enemies when we're going to pull out, and then they can just sit there and wait till we go and then walk back in. Colonel, we got about a minute. I know that might be a question that you have a lot to say about, but in a minute, could you try to answer that?
So if you do things, so the real objective in war, the right way to fight a war, is to do things to your opponent so that the opponent simply can't react. You impose what we call strategic paralysis. You break the enemy. You simply break them. And if you do it that way, it really doesn't make any difference whether you tell them you're going to break them or not, because there's nothing that they can do about it. And we have that capability against the Islamic State. We can say, guys, you're in the bit of the vernacular, you're in 3 weeks, and in fact, that's exactly what they would be, and there would be nothing that they could do about it. And we just got to realize that we need to be controlling what's going on and not reacting to a bunch of guys that are really trying to reenact a 7th century set of warfare successes on the part of Muhammad and his lieutenants.
Colonel, we got to wrap it up. Do you have a website or anything or any way that people can follow your work?
Yes, our company website is Venturist, VENTURIST.com.
Colonel John A. Warden III, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. Sir, it has been a sincere honor to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, and good luck to you all. And Sharon, you all are doing great. Keep pressing.
All right, take care. God bless.
Right, goodbye.
You're listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sharron Angle and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 in Philly, around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners. And now you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Please check out our websites, conservativecommandosradioshow.com and ccrshow.com. On the other side, we're going to be speaking with Jenny Beth Martin, Be right back. This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos Radio Show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we're trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos Radio Show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is question. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Bonnier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. And for a rebroadcast of today's show on Monday afternoon, log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. And don't forget, if you can't get near a computer or a radio, you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. And Sharron Angle, we do have our next guest with us, and the honor of the introduction is yours, so please take it away.
It is my honor to introduce my friend Jenny Beth Martin, who is the president and co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. In February of 2009, following a series of massive expansions